My name is Rachel Voss, 31 years old lieutenant in the United States Navy Special Operations Command. I've served in war zones most Americans can't pronounce, been shot at, bled out, and rebuilt. But somehow none of it prepared me for standing alone under the sun at my sister's graduation, surrounded by my own family who treated me like a stain they couldn't scrub out of the picture. The Columbia University lawn was a sea of silk dresses, navy suits, and champagne flutes clinking under manicured trees. Sunlight glinted off designer sunglasses. Every smile seemed perfectly timed for a magazine cover. And there I was in black slacks and a pressed white blouse, my back pressed to a stone column, like I didn't belong. Like I was crashing the very event I was invited to. My mother passed by me twice and didn't stop once. On her third pass, she leaned in, her lips barely moving. "Rachel, darling, did you really not have anything better than?" That her eyes flicked over my clothes, her tone dipped in acid. "Couldn't you at least try to look like you didn't come straight from a funeral?" I said nothing. Just stared out over the rows of folding chairs and pressed programs fluttering in the breeze. I could hear my father laughing somewhere across the lawn, loud, performative, charming. The kind of laugh that signs contracts and manipulates boardrooms. I didn't have to see him to know the exact expression on his face. Smug pride directed entirely at the golden child. Claire, my little sister, newly minted graduate of Columbia's School of International Affairs, standing on the small platform, radiant and adored. And this, my father said, lifting his glass for the benefit of the donors beside him, is the Voss legacy. Claire, our next ambassador. Then, almost as an afterthought, his gaze swept over me like I was lawn debris. And Rachel? Well, every family's got its black swan, right? Laughter followed. But then it changed. The sound hit first low, mechanical, violent. A thunderclap splitting the sky open. Heads tilted up. Conversations died. The Navy Seahawk helicopter dropped fast into the clearing. Wind whipped gowns into chaos. Guests stumbled, wine spilled, heels snapped. And then Lieutenant Voss, a voice bellowed through the swirling air. "We need you. Now." Everyone turned, including him, and for the first time in my life, he looked afraid. I didn't follow the voice right away. For a second, I just stood there, still pressed to that column, feeling every pair of eyes on me. The rotors were still slowing, but the air was thick with silence. My hair clung to my face, my blouse clung to my back, and my legs. They moved like they remembered a different kind of battlefield. Captain Drew Mercer stepped toward me through the parted crowd. His boots sank slightly into the well-groomed lawn, and I could see the distinct patch on his left shoulder, Joint Special Operations Command. He stopped exactly 6 feet away, straightened, and saluted in front of 100 people who suddenly had no idea what kind of party they were attending anymore. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "There's a situation, a priority one." My fingers twitched against my side, then curled into a fist. I nodded once sharply. "Where?" He extended a sealed manila envelope. I didn't open it. Instead, I looked past him, past the brass and leather and military urgency, and right at my father. Gregory Voss stood frozen beside the university dean. His champagne glass still in hand, tilted mid-toast. His face was tight, calculating. Shock wasn't natural to him. He only wore it when he hadn't planned the scene. And this wasn't his scene anymore. Behind him, Claire's graduation cap had blown off in the helicopter's turbulence. She was holding her program like a shield, blinking at me like she didn't recognize the woman in front of her. I took the envelope, tucked it under my arm, and turned without a word. My heels clicked against the stone steps as I followed Mercer back across the lawn. No one tried to stop me. No one dared. I heard someone whisper "Lieutenant" like they were trying the word on their tongue for the first time. A woman in pearls made the sign of the cross. I reached the chopper's door, ducked under the blades, and climbed in. The inside was all steel and vibration. 2 operators sat in silence across from me. Rifles secured, but not hidden. No nods, no questions. Just readiness. Mercer strapped in beside me, tapped his comms, and gave a single word, "Clear." The Seahawk lifted. The entire lawn dipped below us, the Ivy League grandeur growing smaller by the second. I looked out through the narrow window. My mother had one hand shielding her eyes. My father still hadn't moved. They looked tiny now. Fragile. Mercer turned toward me. You're probably wondering why I came like that. I'm guessing discretion wasn't an option, I said, deadpan. A flicker of a grin. We needed your attention. You had it. He gestured to the envelope. You've been listed as the legal signatory for a Department of Defense procurement contract tied to a shell entity, Orion Strategies, LLC. The problem is that company never delivered a single unit of equipment. And the funds are gone. I exhaled slow. Amount $3.2 million. The silence between us thickened like fog. He continued. Problem is your name's all over it. Legal authority, power of attorney, digital signature. I didn't authorize anything, I said flatly. I know, he said. That's why we're pulling you in. I shifted in my seat, eyes narrowing. How'd they get my signature? Your mother emailed a scanned form, Mercer said. 6 months ago, labeled Helping Rachel. It was forwarded to a private server. I didn't answer, just stared out the window as the Hudson gave way to urban sprawl and the blue haze of the Atlantic beyond. In my chest, something cold began to settle, a deep, familiar stillness. I'd known betrayal, but this was strategy. They waited until I was dark, on assignment off-grid, beyond phones, beyond reach. I'd trained for that. I'd even warned them I'd be gone. I had told them to expect silence. They took that silence and weaponized it. I had been overseas chasing shadows in the Philippines. Meanwhile, someone in a townhouse in Boston had used my name to file fraudulent invoices to a defense contract broker. And that someone had access to my personal credentials. I let the noise of the rotors drown everything out as the helicopter banked south toward D.C. That day, Claire's graduation was supposed to be just another moment I quietly endured. I was used to being invisible in the family photographs, used to being cropped out of conversations, anniversaries, and headlines, used to being the daughter they edited out. But now they'd used me, not just forgotten me, not just belittled me. They'd stolen my name, my career, my oath. And I was going to get it all back. The Seahawk touched down at Fort Belvoir, under cover of late afternoon haze. The sun was low but sharp, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Mercer and I disembarked without ceremony, moving straight toward the hangar where a black SUV was waiting, engine running, 2 more officers already inside. No salutes, no questions, just urgency. Inside the vehicle, Mercer handed me a tablet. This is what triggered the alert. I scrolled through the digital documents. At the top of the screen, Orion Strategies LLC. Equipment Fulfillment Contract, DoD Routing Code. 495K Theta. My name was on every page, electronic signature, departmental ID, even the biometric timestamp had been spoofed. I knew those lines, I knew the format, but I had never signed them. Where'd this get flagged? I asked, my voice tight. Office of Naval Procurement. Routine audit pulled up the inconsistency when Orion failed to deliver combat-ready GPS jammers to the 7th Fleet, Mercer said. It was passed to JSOC when your name came up. You were listed as financial liaison. That's impossible, I murmured. I was in Mindoro province when this was filed. No satellite contact, no uplink access. We were blacked out for 19 days, Mercer nodded. That's why they're scared. The Pentagon doesn't like ghosts, and you're supposed to be one. The SUV stopped outside a secure 2-story building, wrapped in fencing and mirrored glass. We stepped into a cold, dimly lit war room, the kind with no windows and bad coffee. Rows of screens covered the far wall, live feeds and metadata streams flickering with quiet menace. This was where silence got dissected. This is Agent Keating, Naval Cyber Forensics, Mercer said, gesturing to a clean-shaven man who looked more CIA than sailor. He offered a curt nod and slid a keyboard toward me. We traced the original login to a residential IP address in Boston. Device registered to a Gregory Voss, Keating said. But what's more interesting is the metadata on the power of attorney document, uploaded from an internal home server, encrypted but sloppily. Whoever did it didn't expect anyone to come looking. I stared at the file name on screen. Power of attorney or Voss final.pdf. The modification date. A week before I deployed. My stomach turned. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was premeditated. Keating pulled up a surveillance, still grainy, time-stamped but unmistakable. My father in his private study, seated in front of the family server tower. A woman's silhouette hovered beside him. I didn't need the image clarified. I knew that posture, that pearl necklace, that curved jawline. My mother. This isn't just one person, I said, the words tasting like rust. They worked together. They had access, Keating said. And they knew exactly when you'd be unreachable. Another screen popped up: email threads, metadata headers, an entire web of coordination between Gregory's executive assistant, a shell contractor in Arlington, and a small procurement office in Reston. It wasn't elegant, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to ride the blind spots in federal oversight long enough to disappear. They were going to move the funds to a Cayman account through a fake consulting firm, Keating said. But Orion missed a delivery confirmation deadline. That's what saved you. I exhaled slowly, anchoring myself. I want copies of everything I said. Every server hit, every IP trace, every invoice, chain of custody. I'll have a military lawyer look at it. No Mercer cut in, not military. This needs to go outside the chain of command. This is political, financial, and personal. You need someone who doesn't answer to a flag. I met his eyes. You have someone in mind. Mercer cracked a faint, humorless smile. There's a woman in D.C. Name's Andrea Beck, former Marine JAG. She burned her bridges with the Pentagon and started her own firm. Doesn't play nice, doesn't blink. Good, I said. I don't want someone who plays nice. Keating transferred the files to a secure drive, slid it across the table. I'm going to find out how far this goes, I said, standing. Mercer leaned back in his chair. You do that. But understand something, your parents may not have used a weapon, but this was war. The kind with lawyers and money and people who disappear behind red tape. You sure you want to be on that field? I fought worse, I said. In worse conditions. Alone. Not anymore, he replied. Not this time. I nodded, then pocketed the drive. Outside, the last of the sun was bleeding out behind the trees. And I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't fighting for approval anymore. I was fighting for my name. The train from Alexandria to Union Station cut through the dusky Virginia suburbs like a steel scalpel. I chose a quiet car, tucked against the window, the encrypted drive resting heavy in the inside pocket of my coat. Outside, office lights blinked out one by one across the skyline. Inside, I rehearsed the data trail like a mission brief. The date of upload, the email from my mother, the shell company, the missing gear, my father's name buried in subsidiary filings. Arian Strategies was a facade. That much was clear, but the precision with which it had been constructed. That was personal. Someone knew where the military's blind spots were. Someone who'd been watching me for years. The deception hadn't started with this contract. It had simply matured. I thought about the envelope my mother had once sent me before deployment. Just a card, a few lines scribbled with her usual detachment. We're proud of you. Stay safe. Let us know if you need anything. I had kept it tucked in my footlocker, thinking maybe it meant something. Now I knew better. They hadn't sent it out of care. They were documenting my absence. The train slowed as we approached D.C. proper. I didn't glance at the Capitol dome or the floodlit monuments. All of that had always felt like background scenery, shiny illusions for tourists and men in suits. My war had never been in those buildings. It was waiting for me in a brownstone off DuPont Circle. Andrea Beck's office was upstairs in a weathered corner building that used to house a print shop. The hallway smelled of old books and floor wax. I knocked once and stepped into a room that felt more like a field command post than a law firm. Papers covered every surface. Military citations framed next to barred mission plaques. A dusty Marine Corps flag hung above the coat rack. And behind a steel desk sat Andrea Beck herself, early 40s, high and tight-bun eyes like radar. She didn't rise. Lieutenant Voss, she said. I've read the file Mercer sent over. Her voice was clipped, her vowels sharp. Do you believe it? I asked. Oh, I don't deal in belief, she said. I deal in leverage. What you have here is actionable, but it's messy. Internal fraud, forged power of attorney shell corporations. This isn't a court-martial. This is economic warfare. Then let's fight it like war. Beck leaned forward, interlocked her fingers. Tell me what you want. Justice, I said, without pause. Justice, she repeated, her brow lifting. Or revenge, I held her stare. They stole my identity, used my silence to siphon millions from the Department of Defense, and tried to erase me with it, I said. If they thought I wouldn't fight back, they've forgotten who raised me. For a second, the edge in her expression softened. I get it, she said quietly. I've been burned too. By suits who thought the rank on my collar was just for decoration. She pushed a legal pad across the desk. First we go dark, no social media, no email. You're not a whistleblower yet, you're a ghost. Second, I subpoena every financial trail connected to Orion and Voss Wellington Holdings. Third, she paused. You're going to need to speak to your mother. I didn't flinch, but the knot in my chest pulled tighter. I'll handle it, I said. No, she replied. You'll need to do more than handle it. You'll need to see her clearly, for the first time. She reached under the desk and pulled out a narrow, locked case. Inside was a hard copy of the original power of attorney. Beck handed me a magnifier. Look at the signature. I did. It was perfect. Too perfect. No ink bleed. No pressure variance. Digital lift, she said. Probably scraped from a scanned promotion order or fitness report. Whoever did this had access to your personnel file. My hand tightened around the glass. Your father forged this, she added. But your mother delivered it. I nodded, silent. Beck closed the file and folded her hands again. You said you wanted justice. Here's the cost. This isn't just taking your father to court. This is dismantling everything you were raised in. Are you ready to blow up your own house? I thought of the words Mercer had used in the hangar. They didn't just forget you, they used you. Yes, I said. Burn it to the ground. She smiled for the first time. It wasn't warm, it was professional. A fellow soldier acknowledging the beginning of war. I never told anyone about that Christmas. Not really, but it's where everything started to calcify. The difference between being loved and being used. Between being seen and being shown off. It was December 2009. I was 19, freshly accepted to the Naval Academy. I had spent the fall buried in paperwork and long-distance phone calls with a recruiter who didn't think a girl from Beacon Hill had what it took to make it through plebe summer. But I proved him wrong. I came home that winter thinking maybe my family would finally see me. Not just tolerate me, not just speak around me, actually see me. The house was a page from an architecture magazine, 5 stories, all white stone and black ironwork strung up in golden lights, like the cover of a Saks catalog. Inside the piano I was never allowed to touch, played some pre-programmed version of Oh Holy Night. The whole place smelled like pine citrus and money. My father stood by the fire with a glass of something neat talking about end-of-year market positions. Claire, 17, then twirled through the living room in a velvet dress, angling for a glimpse of her gift under the tree. She knew which one. It was wrapped in blue foil, topped with a silver bow. The size alone gave it away. A box that shape only ever meant one thing. When she tore into it, the room lit up like Times Square. It was a brand new BMW key fob. Metallic blue custom plates, leather interior. You'll need it at Princeton, my father said, placing his hand on her shoulder with practiced affection. My little diplomat can't take the train forever, Claire squealed. My mother clapped softly, eyes damp with joy. They looked like a political campaign photo, perfectly coordinated, perfectly shallow. Then it was my turn. There was no crowd, no applause. Just my father reaching into his blazer and pulling out a plain cream envelope. He handed it to me with a flat smile. Inside, a check for $500. For incidentals, he said. Maybe some wardrobe adjustments. I imagine they still expect women to wear skirts on formal nights, even in uniform, my mother added. And something to soften your jawline, darling. You don't want to look severe in your academy photo. That was the moment I understood. Claire was the golden heir. I was the liability. Even my dreams had to be softened, repackaged, made feminine. They'd built an empire on appearances, and I didn't fit the frame. I folded the check back into the envelope and placed it carefully on the mantel behind a porcelain angel. Neither of them noticed. After dinner, I sat alone on the back terrace, coat pulled tight, watching snow settle across the lawn. It was beautiful in the way silence sometimes is, right until it becomes unbearable. That was the night I made the first real decision of my life. I didn't just want to serve. I wanted to disappear from their world completely. Not out of rebellion, but out of necessity. Because survival in that house meant erasing who I was piece by piece. And I refused. The next morning, while Claire was taking selfies with her new car, I walked into my father's study, signed the acceptance form for Annapolis, and mailed it myself. He found out 2 days later when the letter arrived back from the registrar. He didn't yell. Yelling would have implied emotion. Instead, he looked at me over his reading glasses, then turned back to the Wall Street Journal. "You've made your choice," he said. "You can live with the consequences." He didn't mean war, or hardship, or even death. He meant banishment. He meant silence at the dinner table, Christmas cards without my name, graduation ceremonies with empty chairs. And for years I lived with that. I swallowed it, absorbed it, carried it into every deployment, every debrief, every moment I stood on foreign soil, wearing the name of a man who thought my life choices were an embarrassment. But now he'd used that name to commit federal crimes. And suddenly, I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was the insurance policy. The silence had become too expensive, and someone was about to pay for it. The Voss family library wasn't a place for reading. It was a gallery of curated intellect mahogany shelves, lined with leather-bound books no one opened, first editions chosen by decorators, not by passion. The room always smelled faintly of cigar smoke, old money, and varnish. That was where I told him. I was 21, home on winter leave. 2 years into the academy, already ranked in the top 10% of my class, already doing PT before dawn. And weapon quals on weekends, while my classmates went wine tasting in France. My father was in his usual spot by the bay window, sipping scotch, staring at the Boston skyline like it owed him something. I stood there in uniform pleated navy skirt, brass buttons, perfectly aligned heels, polished to regulation shine. He didn't look up right away. "I need to speak with you," I said. "Go ahead," he replied, still watching the skyline. "I'm applying to Bud S next semester," I said. "Special Warfare Pipeline. SEAL Officer Selection." That got his attention. He turned toward me slowly, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "You're joking." "I'm not." He set his glass down on a leather coaster, no clink, just a soft, controlled motion. Then he stood, moved toward his desk, and rested his palms against it. "You're a Voss," he said. "Not a mercenary, not a weapon. I'm a naval officer. You're a woman." I blinked. "You think that matters?" I asked. "To the mission." "No," he said coldly. "To perception, everything. You are not going to crawl through the mud with boys from Alabama and pretend that earns you a seat at the table." I didn't reply. I just stared at him. He walked to a framed oil portrait near the fireplace. Our great-grandfather, some steel tycoon from Pittsburgh, who helped bankroll half of Harvard. My father reached up and adjusted the frame by half an inch like it had offended him. "I sent you to Annapolis to polish the family crest," he said, "not drag it through sand." I stepped forward, voice firm. "This isn't about you." "Yes, it is," he snapped louder than I'd ever heard him. "Everything that carries this name is about me, about legacy. You think they'll call you Lieutenant Voss on the news when something goes wrong? No. They'll call you daughter of financier Gregory Voss, and every article will bleed into the next quarter's projections. So it's about your investments. It's always about the investments. I don't know what I expected. Maybe not pride, but maybe something adjacent to it. Recognition, a sliver of respect. What I got was a threat disguised as counsel. "You will destroy your career before it begins," he said. "No command will take you seriously. You'll be the diversity pick, the girl in the corner no one wants to team up with. And when it all comes crashing down, don't come crawling back." I straightened my spine. "I won't." He turned back to his desk and picked up a silver letter opener, turning it slowly in his hand. "There's still time to change your application," he said. "I already submitted it," I replied. A long silence. Then he looked at me, really looked, and I saw it, not disappointment, not fear, but insult. I had gone off script. That was the real betrayal. I left the room without another word. From that day forward, he never mentioned my career again. Not once. No calls, no letters. Not even when I passed Bud S, when I completed SQT, when I pinned the trident, and became the first woman in my cohort to lead a real-world combat team. He simply edited me out. At family dinners, I was always abroad. At galas, Rachel does something with logistics. And yet, when they needed access to someone deep enough in the system to bypass Department of Defense compliance checks, whose security clearance could open sealed procurement channels, suddenly my name was useful again. That was the lie of the library. It wasn't that I embarrassed him. It was that I had value, and he planned to harvest every ounce of it without my knowledge, without my consent, and without apology. The skiff at Fort Belvoir was as cold and sterile as a morgue. White fluorescent light, no windows, just metal desks, sound-dampening walls, and the dull hum of server racks processing secure traffic. This was where we dissected the betrayal. Mercer sat to my left. Agent Keating flanked the far terminal, typing with sharp, efficient rhythm. Beck had dialed in remotely, her voice clipped and razor-edged over secure comms. Begin with the metadata, she instructed. If we can timestamp the original file creation and upload, we can triangulate who had motive, access, and timing. Keating brought the power of attorney up on the main screen. My name, perfectly forged, hovered in the bottom right corner. Created January 12, 2023, he said. Uploaded from a personal device connected to a home IP registered to Gregory Voss. The document was sent 2 hours later from an account belonging to Marjorie Voss, my mother. The digital chain couldn't have been more damning if they'd signed it in blood. Beck's voice cut in steady. That's your deployment window, confirmed, Mercer replied. She was assigned to the Pacific Maritime Task Group that week. Radio silence protocol. Blackout authorization confirmed through CENTCOM, which meant they waited for it. They knew I wouldn't see the email, couldn't respond, wouldn't even know it existed. They had planned it down to the hour. Keating pulled up a second monitor showing a digital certificate. Here's the credential key used to sign the DoD procurement contract. It's a clone of her military ID cert. He looked at me. How many places have you ever used your CAC to log into a civilian network? None, I said. Never. Then it was stolen from a cached access point, Keating said. Or lifted from a corrupted backup. Beck's voice returned colder now. They used your clearance, your deployment, your silence. Everything the Navy drilled into you for mission security, they flipped it into a liability. I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, because I couldn't trust myself to say it without cracking. For years I had told myself the distance was protective, that if I didn't expect love, I couldn't be disappointed, that if I didn't seek their approval, their rejection wouldn't sting. But I had trusted them. Somewhere beneath all the armor I had still believed they were flawed, not cruel. Selfish, but not strategic. I had been wrong. Beck's voice softened slightly. I know what this feels like. No, I said quietly. You know what betrayal feels like. This was engineering. Silence hung for a moment. Then Mercer broke it. We need to get ahead of this. If Voss moves money through more shells, we lose the trail. And if someone in DoD catches wind that an active duty officer is under investigation, I'm not under investigation, I snapped. He raised his palm slightly. Not officially, not yet. But optics matter. Beck agreed. We need a civilian move. No uniform. No military court. Not if you want the truth seen clearly. Agreed, I said. Keating turned toward me. There's more. He pulled up an audio file, a clipped official recording. The metadata blinked February 2023, DoD Personnel Office, flagged call center review. The file played. Hello, this is Greg Voss. I have power of attorney for Lieutenant Rachel Voss. She's overseas unreachable, unfortunately, but I'm handling her financial matters during her deployment. You'll find the authorization attached. My own voice wasn't in the recording, because I had never been part of the conversation, because I hadn't even known it took place. Beck's voice was granite now. He's not just guilty. He's sloppy. I want to press, I said. I want this prosecuted to the end. You'll need more than metadata, she replied. You'll need motive, pattern, fraud, intent. Otherwise, he'll say it was a misunderstanding. Then we give him no room for misunderstanding. Mercer stood. There's a lead we haven't explored yet. What, Claire, he said. If he used your name for one operation, odds are he's done the same with her somewhere else. She's clean, untouchable. The perfect fallback identity. I paused. If he did, I said slowly, she wouldn't even know. Exactly, Mercer said. That's what makes her the perfect cover. Beck was quiet for a beat. Bring her in, she said finally. But do it gently. If she's still loyal, you'll lose her. If she's angry, we might have leverage. I looked back at the digital signature still glowing on the screen. Rachel E. Voss. My name twisted into a weapon. No longer just stolen. Now activated. Beck didn't waste time with small talk. When I walked into her office the next morning, she was already at her desk, sleeves rolled up, scanning through a new chain of documents from Keating. She didn't look up as she spoke. We've got more than identity theft, she said. Your father didn't just steal your clearance. He created a shadow identity. A full one. She turned the monitor toward me. An application for a corporate account at Berkshire First Bank in Atlanta filed under R.E. Voss. Different birth date, Georgia address. Attached to it a scan of a driver's license I'd never owned. He built a ghost version of you, she said. And this version has been receiving small deposits from Orion's parent company. Quiet, regular. Just enough to stay alive on paper. I leaned in. He didn't just borrow my name. He built infrastructure around it. Exactly. And if we time it right, we can flip that infrastructure on him. She tapped a stylus against the screen. We're filing discovery motions today. Every entity under Voss Wellington Holdings gets flagged. I want every officer called. We move first, and we move loudly. Won't that alert him? He's already alerted. After that little helicopter stunt, he's been scrambling. Phone calls to firms were already watching. Private contractors getting nervous. She slid a printed folder across the desk. Internal emails between your father and 3 defense subcontractors. He's trying to frame this as a paperwork error, blaming it on a junior analyst who misunderstood a verbal agreement. And the forged POA. He claims you gave verbal consent and the form was filed late. Delayed bureaucracy. I exhaled sharply. He's gaslighting the system. He's done it before, she said. Just never against someone trained to shoot back. I studied the documents a moment longer. So what's next? She leaned back in her chair. Now we apply pressure. We use your record, your deployments, your evidence. And we go straight to a closed hearing. Civilian Oversight Review Board. I nodded. No press yet. Not yet. First we make it official. She reached for another folder. Her voice dropped a shade. Claire may be involved. I tensed. Not knowingly, Beck added. But there are payments that trace back to her Columbia tuition. Academic grants processed through shell foundations tied to your father's company. She doesn't know, I said. She wouldn't be part of this. I believe you. But she needs to hear the truth. And if she reacts with anger instead of denial, we may have leverage. I stood up, already reaching for my coat. Beck looked up at me. You ready to do this in the open? I met her eyes. Yes. Her expression turned sharp. Then we start the breach. The invitation came in the form of a text. Just 4 words. Lunch tomorrow, just us. No signature, but I didn't need one. Only one person in my life sent commands disguised as kindness. Marjorie Voss had always been fluent in the art of emotional diplomacy. She could end a conversation with a glance, dismantle a person with a compliment. Where my father wielded money, my mother dealt in appearances, quiet, lethal, and always in control. I almost didn't reply, but Beck had been clear. You want to understand how deep this goes. Start with the hand that loaded the gun. So I answered. Capitol Grill, noon, enemy territory. The next day I arrived 5 minutes early, deliberately in civilian clothes. Navy slacks, gray blazer hair pinned back tight. The hostess barely glanced at me before gesturing toward the corner booth. Of course. They always knew where to seat the Vosses. My mother was already there, nursing a glass of Chardonnay, and dabbing her lips with a linen napkin as if preparing for a photo shoot. Rachel, she said, smiling as I approached. Her voice was smooth as aged bourbon, her teeth perfect, her tone maternal, with just a dash of implied insult. You look composed? Funny, I said, sliding into the booth across from her. You look rehearsed. Her smile didn't move. A server came by with menus. She waved him off with practiced ease. Just the salad for me. Rachel, I'm not here for lunch. That cracked her veneer for half a second. Then the performance resumed. She folded her hands. I know you're upset. I said nothing. She tilted her head. This business with your father. Don't, I said. Don't call it business. Call it what it is. Her mouth tightened. Rachel, you have to understand he wasn't trying to hurt you. He was managing a difficult situation. You were unreachable. Contracts were at risk. He committed federal fraud, I snapped, using my name, my clearance. And you sent the document, you forwarded the file, a long pause. Then gently she said, you trusted me. And I didn't want to betray that. But I also didn't want to let you fail. That landed like a slap. You think helping him steal from the government was protecting me, I asked. I think she said calmly that sometimes we make hard choices for the people we love. No, I said. You made easy choices for the people you fear. Her hand reached across the table. I pulled mine back. I've spent years convincing myself you were just a bystander, I said. That you were collateral to his ambition. But now I see it. You were the architect of the illusion. You gave him the keys. Tears welled up in her eyes. Not real ones. Not yet. But she was warming up. Rachel, we are a family. Mistakes were made, yes, but this crusade of yours, you're going to destroy us. Do you want Claire to suffer? Do you want your father in prison? I stared at her. Yes, I said. The word hit like a gunshot. She gasped audibly, the first honest sound she'd made all morning. You've lost yourself, she whispered. No, I said, rising from my seat. I finally found the line, and I'm done pretending it isn't there. I pulled two $50 bills from my wallet and dropped them on the table. My mother stared at them like they were pieces of me she didn't recognize. I gave you every chance to stand up, I said. To choose the truth over convenience. And you chose him. I leaned in quiet, measured. You didn't just lose me, you sold me. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. Outside, the January wind cut straight through my blazer, but I welcomed it. Real cold was better than false warmth. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Beck, you okay? I stared at the message, thumb hovering. Then I typed, we go public. Civil Review Board. No more backroom strategy. I want him on record. Her reply came instantly. Understood. We'll burn it clean. I slid the phone into my pocket and kept walking. Behind me, the Voss family empire had just lost its last defense. It was time to breach the gates. The next morning, the blow landed. It didn't come in the form of a subpoena or a countersuit. It arrived as a headline, subtle, polished, and sharpened like a scalpel. Concern grows over mental fitness of decorated naval officer. Beneath it, a blurry photo of me taken from some old press kit accompanied by a short piece in a D.C. Insider blog known for laundering reputations and smearing enemies. The article cited anonymous sources close to the Voss family, hinting at behavioral instability, PTSD from deployment, and confused accusations that lacked substantiation. It didn't mention the forged contracts, or the power of attorney, or the millions funneled through my stolen name. Just questions. Hazy ones, crafted to plant seeds of doubt. I stared at the article on my laptop, feeling nothing at first. Then I felt the tremble in my right hand, the old familiar burn behind my eyes. Not grief, not even rage, but something more corrosive, recognition. This was what he did. My father didn't fight in courtrooms. He fought in boardrooms, headlines, whispers. He never denied. He deflected, reframed. If he couldn't destroy the message, he would destroy the messenger. And I was the messenger now. The phone rang. I didn't need to check the ID. It was Claire. I let it ring twice before answering. What did you do? She demanded. Her voice cracked high and panicked. Why is everyone looking at me like I'm radioactive? Dad said you were spiraling. He said he was trying to protect you, Claire, and now this hearing, a federal inquiry. What are you doing? I paused. The silence on my end hit her harder than any answer. Rachel, she said, quieter now. Please tell me this isn't true. I exhaled slowly. It's all true, Claire. Every cent of that tuition they paid. Every tax shelter, every consulting fee. He funded it with stolen money, and my name was the weapon. There was a long, brittle pause. Then she said it. I didn't know. I believe you, I said. But ignorance isn't innocence. It's just privilege. She didn't reply, not at first. Then in a voice so soft I almost didn't catch it, she said, He told me you were exaggerating, that it was just complicated paperwork. He used me, I said. He used both of us. But only one of us was trained to survive betrayal. I heard her sniffle just once. I don't know what to believe anymore, she whispered. Start with the facts, I said. I'll show them to you, all of them. But you have to want the truth. She didn't answer that. She just hung up. I closed my laptop and looked out the apartment window. Below, people walked briskly through the cold coffee in hand, earbuds in lives intact. Untouched. Beck arrived 10 minutes later. She didn't knock, just came in like she belonged there. She dropped a folder on my kitchen counter. This just came in, she said. He's funding a counterbrief through his law firm. They're pushing the psychological narrative hard. Let them, I said. She studied me. You're calm. I'm trained to be calm, I replied. Still, it's different when it's your name. No, I said, flipping the folder open. It's exactly the same. Because I fought people who tried to kill me, and they failed. My father, he's just trying to rewrite me. I met her eyes, and he's going to fail too. Beck smiled not softly, but with a kind of grim pride. Then we do this the hard way. She pulled out a document. Petition accepted. Civilian Oversight Review Board has agreed to hear the case. Closed session, but formal. When 72 hours, I nodded. Beck took a step closer. One more thing. They won't go quietly. He's going to play the victim, maybe even cry on cue. I don't care. You should. Because sometimes Rachel, the person with the cleanest suit, wins the room. Then I won't wear a suit. That caught her off guard. I'll wear the uniform, I said. And for the first time since this began, Beck didn't respond with strategy or advice. She just said, good. Because we both knew what that meant. I wasn't just showing up to fight. I was showing up as who I really was. The file room at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado was a concrete tomb of memory. Climate-controlled, triple-locked, and lit by flickering fluorescence. It housed decades of service records stacked in labeled bins and bound folders that smelled like salt dust and ink. I stood in front of a steel cabinet marked VZ credentials, clipped to my collar, and gave the request. I need every fit rep and deployment order attached to Lieutenant Rachel E. Voss. 10-year span. Beginning with May 2013. The petty officer on duty, stocky mid-40s, tattooed forearm visible under his sleeve, looked up and gave me a curt nod. Yes, ma'am. He didn't ask why, didn't have to. The weight behind my voice, the uniform I wore, the timing, it told him everything he needed to know. Something serious was in motion, something that didn't need ceremony. 15 minutes later, I sat in a cold side room with Mercer folders stacked in 2 piles, deployment logs and fitness reports. Years of my life printed and punched, reduced to code strings and coordinates. We opened them one by one. March 2023, I was in Palawan training local SEAL attachments. September 2022, joint ops with French GIGN in the Alps. April 2021, redacted operations off the Gulf of Oman, classified under direct action. Every month, every maneuver, every hour accounted for, cross-referenced with Keating's timeline, each forged contract, every fraudulent authorization my name had been invoked, while I was halfway around the world. Mercer pointed to a particular line in one of the fit reps, his finger tapping the paper. This one, he said. The $3.2 million transfer from Orion. It was signed in Richmond, March 15, 2021. He turned the page. Meanwhile, you were conducting a pre-op dry run with drone overwatch in Yemen. No electronic access. Log shows full blackout protocol. We boxed each timeline like forensic surgeons building a chain of custody. The evidence wasn't just technical anymore. It was irrefutable. Let's load all of it, I said. Every page, every detail. I want the review board to drown in proof. Mercer nodded and kept scanning. By the time the sun began to dip behind the barracks outside, we had compiled 2 digital dossiers. One for the board, one for Beck's legal strike file. And still, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. Because this wasn't just about catching him. It was about undoing a narrative that had been carved into me for decades. That I was the mistake, the failure, the one who couldn't measure up to family legacy. But as I looked at those orders stamped and signed by admirals and captains and squad leaders who had trusted me with their lives, I knew the truth had never belonged to them. It belonged to me. And I had earned every damn syllable of it. Later that night, Beck called. I just got confirmation, she said. Your father owns a shell company registered in Delaware, Ironwood West, LLC. It's been quietly receiving monthly payments from a Morstan Holdings subsidiary. Guess who signed the Articles of Incorporation? Let me guess, I said. Me, your ghost, Beck replied. Same forged signature. But this time, they also attached a scanned copy of a Georgia driver's license. Fake. Never issued by the state. But it was uploaded from an IP address tied to your father's law firm. K Street. She paused. He created an entire identity out of you. Not just for one scam, an entire structure. Accounts, firms, addresses. A phantom to move money through. The room felt suddenly smaller, like even the walls were watching. Why, I asked. Why go that far? Because your military record is clean, Beck said. Untouchable. You're an ideal front. No flags, no debt, no past infractions. If someone had run a surface check on that ghost identity, it would have come back spotless. I said nothing. She didn't fill the silence. When I finally spoke, my voice was low. He used my name because it was the one thing he knew I'd never dishonor. The one part of me he thought was predictable. And that's where he miscalculated, Beck said. Yes, I whispered. Because I don't protect names. I protect the truth. She didn't say another word. She didn't have to. The war was no longer theoretical. And the ammunition was real. The file came through just before dawn, dropped into Beck's encrypted inbox with no subject line. Just a WAV file and a label DOJ recording, authorization trace, RV. We didn't wait. I was already in her office when it arrived. The sun hadn't cleared the rooftops over DuPont Circle, and the only light came from her desk lamp and the low glow of her laptop. She clicked the file without ceremony. It began with a protocol prompt, standard DoD verification. This is Petty Officer Langley confirming beneficiary update protocol for Lieutenant Rachel Voss. We're processing a service member life insurance change. I need to verify power of attorney. Then silence. Half a breath. Then him. This is Gregory Voss. I'm her legal representative. She's deployed and cannot be reached at this time. You can proceed with me. Click. 10 seconds. No more. But it hit like a mortar round. Beck froze, then replayed it. Once. Twice. She didn't speak. She just watched the waveform on her screen like she was tracking the heartbeat of a crime in real time. I didn't move either. But inside, everything did. I'd heard that voice on holidays. Over steak dinners and trust fund meetings. At the long oak table where contracts were discussed like scripture. But never had it sounded so precise, so weaponized. Not angry, not emotional. Just calibrated. He didn't even hesitate, I murmured. He just said it like it was protocol. Like he wasn't stealing a piece of me in real time. Beck nodded slowly. Because he's done it before. Maybe not with paperwork this big, but the tone, that wasn't improvisation. That was muscle memory. The recording wasn't damning because of what was said. It was damning because of how calmly it was said. Beck muted her screen, then looked at me. Her tone dropped an octave. This is felony level. He impersonated a legal authority during an active duty blackout. He accessed classified beneficiary files, posing as an appointed agent. That alone carries weight. I said nothing. I couldn't not right away. Because I was remembering the last time my father used that voice on me. I was 16. He'd found a crumpled Naval Academy brochure in my backpack and held it up like it was contraband. This isn't your path, Rachel, he'd said. You don't need to prove anything. That was always his strategy, smooth denial. No volume, just cold logic designed to suffocate conviction. I hadn't realized until now that he'd been training me to doubt my instincts. So when I finally did choose the military, he knew exactly how to twist that silence into leverage. And now it was on tape. Play it again, I said. Beck did. And this time I didn't flinch. I let it hit. Because you don't win a war by looking away. You win by studying the enemy's voice until it can't hurt you anymore. When it ended, I stood. This doesn't stay buried, I said. I want the review board to hear every syllable. Beck gave a single nod. No notes, no legal caution. Then we'll burn the lie all the way down. The hearing room didn't look like justice. It looked like suppression. Muted gray carpet, low ceilings, recycled air. A row of adjudicators sat behind a polished walnut panel. 3 expressions trained into bureaucratic neutrality. No gavels, no cameras. Just the quiet, almost reverent hum of federal procedure. This wasn't a courtroom. This was a controlled burn. I walked in at exactly 0859. Not in civilian clothes, not in business casual. In full Navy service dress blues pressed formal, sharp as memory. The medals over my left breast weren't decoration. They were history. The golden seal, trident over my heart. That was blood, commitment, and proof. I didn't look at him until I was seated. Gregory Voss was already at the respondent's table, flanked by 2 attorneys who probably billed by the syllable. His suit was impeccable, tie knotted with surgical precision. But something had changed. He wasn't smiling, not even pretending to. There was a tightness around his mouth, a flicker in the way he adjusted his cufflink. A hint barely perceptible, but I knew it. That wasn't poise. That was control slipping. Beck opened without flourish. Members of the board, she said, standing beside me with a quiet ferocity. What you are about to hear is not a matter of inheritance or family dispute or civil friction. It is the weaponization of military service for financial gain. This is identity theft fraud and unauthorized access to federal systems executed not by hackers or foreign actors, but by the father of a decorated officer. Her tone never rose. It didn't need to. She laid out the evidence like field medics laying out surgical instruments. Deployment logs cross-referenced with transaction timestamps. Video stills showing my father in his study uploading sensitive documents. The scanned power of attorney forged with my lifted digital signature. And finally, the audio recording. We played it on the overhead speakers, his voice clear and calm. This is Gregory Voss. I'm her legal representative. She's deployed. You can proceed with me. A long pause followed. No one moved, not even the stenographer. Then came the final document. Beck tapped the screen behind her and pulled up a PDF with one highlighted line. An investment account, she said, her voice soft now. Opened under Rachel Voss's military identity. Intended to trigger payout upon her death in service. The sole listed beneficiary. She turned the projector toward the audience gallery. Claire Voss. The breath caught behind me. I didn't have to turn to know it was her, my sister. I heard the paper crinkle in her hands. I imagined her lips moving as she read it over and over, trying to decipher what part of it could possibly be a misunderstanding. There was none. This was the final insurance policy. My father didn't just lie. He planned my exit and Claire's profit. I looked at him then. His jaw clenched. He didn't rise, didn't object. His lawyers shuffled one, whispering something urgent, but he ignored them. He was watching me, trying to read the play, still looking for a counter. I stood. The panel invited comment. I didn't hesitate. My name is Lieutenant Rachel E. Voss, United States Navy. My record is clean. My deployments are documented. My clearance is earned. And my identity, every line of it, was taken by the man sitting across from me. I turned to face the board directly. I have been hunted, ambushed, shot at, and buried under the weight of silence. But nothing in my service prepared me for this. For being rewritten by the very people who should have protected me. Then I paused. Honor is a choice, I said. He made his. I stepped back. No theatrics, no tears, just clarity. And somewhere behind me I heard Claire's voice, shaking, soft, a whisper. You used me. He turned, eyes wide. She looked at him like she'd never seen him before, because maybe she hadn't, until that moment. The hallway outside the tribunal was quiet but not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that follows a detonation, dust still settling, ears still ringing. The silence of after. I didn't rush. I walked with measured steps across the marble floor, my heels echoing off the columns. The uniform felt heavier than when I'd put it on that morning, not from fatigue, but from everything it now carried. Everything it had survived. Behind me, the adjudicators remained in deliberation. But I didn't need their ruling. The truth had already spoken, and it was irreversible. The soft shuffle of expensive shoes behind me told me he was following. I didn't turn until he said my name, Rachel. I stopped. He approached slowly, not with the ease of power, but with the caution of a man unarmed. His tie was crooked now, his hair out of place. He looked less like the master architect of a sprawling empire, and more like a man trying not to drown in the ruins of it. I didn't want this, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to hurt you. I turned fully to face him. No more flinching, no more retreat. You didn't hurt me, I said. You erased me. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You took the one thing I built myself, my name, and used it as your escape hatch. You didn't make a mistake. You made a plan. You waited until I was blacked out halfway across the world, and you forged a path to protect yourself. He swallowed, hard eyes darting like he was searching for a foothold. I can fix it, he said. The money, the signatures, the companies, I'll undo it all. You don't have to take this any further. Just say the word. I took a step closer. Just one. There are some things you can't undo, not with a checkbook, not with a press release. His voice cracked. Rachel, please. And it wasn't the plea that made me pause. It was the word itself. He had always called me Rach, Or worse, nothing at all. When I left for Annapolis, he hadn't even said goodbye. When I deployed for Yemen, he sent a pre-printed holiday card and signed his name with a stamp. But now he used my full name. Like he was trying to summon the daughter he remembered. Or the soldier he had tried to impersonate. Either way, it was too late. "I'm not your investment anymore," I said. "I'm not your liability, your fallback plan, or your ghost. I'm not even your daughter," he flinched. Like the words themselves struck him harder than the tribunal ever could. And then a sound behind him. "Claire?" She stood a few feet away, arms folded across her chest like she was holding herself together. Her mascara had smudged. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find a place to begin. "Claire," he said, turning toward her. "Please?" She didn't move. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "About the money, about the account. I didn't know you were never supposed to." I said, my voice softer now. "That was the plan. You'd stay protected, untouched. That's why you were listed as the beneficiary." Claire blinked slowly, realization sinking in. "You were going to let her die," she said to him, voice thin. "And profit off it." "No," he said too fast. "It was never like that." But we all knew the truth now. Even him. She took one step back. And then another. And just like that, the house he'd spent a lifetime constructing, built with status manipulation and precision, began to collapse from within. I watched him reach for her hand outstretched. She didn't take it. I turned to leave, and this time, neither of them followed. I walked through the security doors without looking back. Because some legacies are inherited, and others like mine are cut free. 6 months later, I stood in the Hall of Heroes, beneath the Pentagon, beneath the quiet weight of legacy. I didn't wear dress blues. I came in my combat uniform, desert fatigues, dusty and sun-faded. It wasn't about defiance. It was about truth. I hadn't earned my voice from behind a desk or under the safety of rank. I'd earned it under fire and mud, in silence so loud it bruised your soul. The Secretary of the Navy stood beside me and read aloud a citation, language polished for public ears, careful not to say too much. The operation it referenced was still redacted, still buried beneath layers of clearance and memory, but I remembered it. The heat, the blood, the moment where one wrong breath would have meant we didn't come home. He pinned the silver star to my uniform and offered a quiet nod. I saluted. And that was enough. In the rows of guests there were no reporters, no cameras, just real people. My people. Beck stood in the back row, hands behind her back face, unreadable. Mercer was next to her in uniform, his tie crooked in that way he never seemed to fix. Keating showed up, 2 jackets slung over his shoulder, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. They didn't need to say anything. They already had. After the ceremony, I was asked if I wanted to make remarks. I didn't prepare a speech. I'd learned a long time ago that the truth doesn't need a script, so I stepped to the podium and spoke. "There's a lot people don't see in a uniform," I said. "They see order, strength, clean lines, but they don't see what it costs to keep that line straight." I paused, let the weight of it settle. I was raised to believe silence was strength, that suffering in private was noble, but silence can be twisted. It can be stolen, and when we let others define us in our absence, they build a version of us we can't recognize. I looked up, scanning the crowd. I'm not standing here today because I fought harder than anyone else. I'm standing here because I refused to disappear. The applause was measured, but it was real. That night we skipped the reception and met at a bar in Arlington. One of those places that smells like worn leather, spilled beer, and old war stories. We didn't talk about the tribunal, or the indictment, or what came next. We just existed. Together. I pulled the silver star from my pocket and placed it next to a faded team photo, dusty boots. Sunburned faces, real smiles. That was legacy. Not a name carved into stone, but one earned in silence and finally spoken out loud. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I'd escaped my family. I felt like I'd become my own.